Katie, do you raise any animals?
I don't currently. Well, I guess I wouldn't count my dogs. They're sort of like people size. But when I was a kid, I was in 4-H and I raised rabbits and goats. And at one point I think we had ducks in our backyard, but ducks are super messy. I've heard that other animals like chickens are super messy as well. What about you, Kerry? You strike me as the animal raising type?
No. When I was growing up, my brother would bring things home, and my dad was always like, ugh. And I could never even try it. But when my brother would bring them home, he would like deal with it for however long it lasted, knowing that it never lasted all that long. So we had, I think we had 2 rabbits, and one of them punched out
Oh no.
a couple weeks. And I'm not saying it was neglect. I think it was just like done with life. I don't know. And so we had the remaining rabbit for a while. But that was it. Yeah, we never like raised anything like on purpose.
Well, you know what, Kerry? I think it's time to punch out.
Like that rabbit.
Not with that rabbit. On today's episode of Punch Out with Katie and Kerry, we are talking with Wesley Faulkner. Wesley is the developer advocate at daily.co, but we are not talking about your job today. We are talking about how to properly raise animals and other topics. So why don't you tell us a little bit about raising kittens and chickens and how you got into it, like why you do it? Just tell us everything, because
I feel like you can't do it with them together, like because when the kittens like want to eat the chickens, or am I just being kitness?
The dogs.
I think this is what we're going to find out.
Okay. Yeah, tell me now, because I will screw this up.
Is it animal husbandry? Is that the name?
Yes.
With like in 4-H.
Yep.
So I would say that we got into animal collecting because eventually my wife has this dream of being a homesteader. So being able to live off the land, and also we are homeschoolers. We homeschool our kids. We have our son is 7 and our daughter is 5, and it's a great learning experience to see the process of life and how things live differently. So we had a cat, and it had 6 kittens. So we have 7 cats now. We have 2 bunnies, 4 chickens, 2 bearded dragons, 1 gecko, a leopard gecko, and 1 fish. And we have a pond full of stockfish that don't have names, and 2 dogs, Lefty and June, and 2 bunnies.
Not lefty and righty. I feel like that was a missed opportunity.
I know. I was waiting for that too.
So any of the animals exhibiting signs of depression? Because I'm telling you, that rabbit was just like hating life.
So the rabbits are new. They may be hating life, but not just yet. We're going to be building an enclosure for them to run around, and hopefully that'll make them happier. Right now they're in like a little hutch.
Did you know this about your wife before you got together, or were you like, oh, more animals? Like, how did this come about? Were you into it yourself? Like,
no, absolutely not. So growing up, my mom did not like having any animals she could not eat. And I wish I was joking, but no, I'm not. And so she couldn't stand animals, but I was resistant at first, and then they grow on you. They're so cute when they're born. They do all these cute things, and then they like really bond with you. And yeah, they grew on me. Especially the kittens. The kittens are really, really cute, and I was there for their birth. Weirdest thing. So cats, usually when they're going to give birth, they find a corner somewhere like hidden. And we got our cat, her name's Grace, when she was maybe 10 months old. She was fairly young, and she really bonded with me. And she started going into labor upstairs, and then she came running downstairs. I was on the couch. She jumped on my lap and started meowing, saying, "It's happening." And so she started, and like I slid off the couch onto my back onto the floor, and then just started petting her. And I was like her cat doula for the birth of all her kittens. Yeah.
Oh, so she didn't hide from you. Is that unusual?
Yeah, that just never happens. And so that was awesome.
So are you going to keep like all these kittens now?
So they were originally going to be promised to other people, and they each one kind of slowly backed away, and so we were stuck with them for now. So the plan was to give them all away, but we might end up keeping them. I can tell you the litter box is no joke though.
Oh, I'm
7
sure.
kittens. Oh my God. We got like multiple times a day. We're talking. We have to clean that out.
Now, are your chickens for laying eggs, or are they just chickens to have?
Once again, it's like homeschooling, learning where your food comes from. So we got them as chicks. And it takes a while for them to be mature enough to lay eggs. So in November, they should be old enough to start laying eggs. And so, yes, we will get eggs daily. Sadly, we had 6 before. And you mentioned dogs and animals eating the chickens. Yeah, they got out, and the dogs thought they were chew toys that they
sad.
didn't squeak.
So your kids learn about the circle of life.
Yes, it was a little traumatic.
No kidding. My God, that must have been horrific.
Now,
so when do they mature enough? Like when is a chicken mature enough to lay eggs? Because like I was mature, I got to pierce my ears and wear lip gloss.
So I think 6 to 7 months. I think that's 5 to 6 months.
So how do you know? Like they just start laying one day?
Yeah, yeah. You make little boxes for them, and they'll go and just lay the eggs there when they're old enough. And apparently, they start off like really tiny, the eggs, and then they as they mature, the egg gets
so you
a
can
little
make
bit
like
full size.
a tiny omelet.
Yeah, they're like little robin eggs.
I don't know if you're looking for unsolicited advice, but I will give it to you anyway.
I am formally declaring that I would love advice, so now the advice is solicited.
So as someone who spent quite a few years raising rabbits, so we had a male and a female rabbit, and they were in a hutch, and they were separated by the wire in between. Rabbits can flatten themselves out really, really small. So like if they are determined to get into the same hutch and reproduce, they will do so. So you might want to consider keeping them separate, because we ended up at one point with a couple of dozen rabbits that we had unintended to have when we really just wanted to have 2.
So like I hear the saying like reproducing like rabbits, right? So
it's a real thing.
How much do they have in a pregnancy, and how often can they get pregnant?
Multiple times a year. We were probably looking at about 4 times a year. Like they're not like humans where they need like all this time to, rest between pregnancies. So, their gestation period is a little bit shorter. It's a couple of months. And
you didn't learn from the first unplanned litter of rabbits. You should do something about it. You're like, well, that's weird.
Oh no, we did. But the rabbits, every time we modified the hutch, they kept getting.
Modify the rabbit.
Yeah. Life finds a way.
Exactly. Yeah. So
or separate hutches. Or put that out there too.
Well, this is why I'm giving this advice. Learn from my mistakes. They have about 6 to 8 with every pregnancy, but the mother does tend to eat the bunnies.
Oh
So
God!
that's also something that you need to be prepared to teach your children around.
Oh, the show gets worse and worse.
Oh, wow. Maybe we'll use it as a disciplinary tool. This is what mothers do when the little ones don't listen to what the parents are saying.
So you're a bad person, Wesley.
When your mom said, "I'm going to eat your toes," she was serious.
She was serious. Speaking of like weird things, let's move on to sci-fi movies and TV. So Wesley, I know that you're like big into sci-fi movies. So like what kinds, like is it more like, I have no idea. Like there's like space stuff, there's like supernatural stuff. Like, is there a genre? Is it everything?
I like it all. I generally tend to lean towards the more plausible. Well, actually, let me say that. But
how plausible is plausible?
I like to stay away from magic. I rather, like, for instance, Matrix. The Matrix. That's not real, of course, but like just they're playing with things that like for those listening. So it's something where it's like if we got advanced enough, that's something that could play out. So like Black Mirror. That kind of sci-fi. I love Star Trek. The tech is not there yet, but it's one of those a dimension into the possibility of the future.
Who wouldn't want that? Like a replicator that could just make your food whatever you want.
Yeah, or a transporter.
Exactly, that's what I would want.
I'm still a little wigged out at the idea of a transporter because I saw Galaxy Quest. Like that scene really stuck with me.
Yes,
it doesn't work as expected.
And also, like, if you think about it, some of what it does is break you apart and then recreate a version that's an exact copy. So you actually are dying, and they're just making a copy that looks and feels just like you.
And has your memories and stuff, though?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you're not there anymore.
No. So your actual personhood is gone, which is really, really weird.
That's pretty disturbing. It's sort of like becoming a vampire when they say like sorry, I'm going all Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know if this is like in your wheelhouse.
You're going the supernatural route of sci-fi.
Yes, but they say so a vampire, it's a demon that takes up residence in your body and it has your memories and stuff, but it isn't you. Mm-hmm. So it sounds the same. It's like you're walking around and with all the same memories and stuff, but it isn't you. I would just like to know, can they leave off like 15 pounds?
Well, there's this thing called, like in Star Trek, sorry, I'm
reconstitute you.
There's something called a buffer. So what they can do is they can modify you while you're in the buffer.
Nice.
So like if you have like COVID or something and you're being beamed onto the ship, they just bump it out and then bring you on. There's several episodes that go into like people being stuck in the buffer or being like merged with other people, and so like instead of two people being on the ship, one person who's a merger of the group. Yeah,
there was a whole episode about people getting caught in the buffer, and it filtered out something that caused them to mature, and like they went back to being kids again physically.
Yeah.
But, mentally, they're still, like, Jean-Luc Picard was still Jean-Luc Picard, but physically, he looks like this little twerp, and he's trying to give orders, and they're like, no. They're like, no, kid.
And there's one with, I think, is it not McCoy, but the engineer from the first Star Trek?
Scotty?
Scotty. They like, from Next Generation, they discovered something going on, and they hit materialize, and Scotty comes from the buffer. So he was held there basically in stasis until they materialized him. So there was a way of holding him there, which is
terrifying.
So it sounds like you're really interested in the more technology-based sci-fi stories versus like the supernatural, or because it sounds like the technology things are, at least from your view, things that are plausible.
Yes, if there's holes in the plot, it just really is a hold up for me to really like buy in. There's this movie, I, Robot, with Will Smith. Have either of you seen it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Spoiler alert for those listening. But basically, it starts off where there's like this hollow cube saying, "Please solve my murder." And there's this scientist that's murdered. And Will Smith is trying to solve the murder, and he finds out that basically the robots are going to try to take over the world. Mm-hmm. And the reason why the scientist killed himself was to make it dramatic. So to get a lot of attention, to really say that, like, this is what I want you to find out. And it's a total BS like premise, because he is the scientist that invented the robots. People are going to listen to him. He doesn't need to kill himself. He can just say that, and I think people will believe it.
So I can fix this, because I think the robots actually like trapped him or something.
They said that, but then there's video of him alluding to it as one of the clues, like in Geneva giving a speech. So he was physically outside of the building at that point when he knew that this was going to happen.
Robots everywhere,
but the thing is, but he also makes this special robot that obey the laws, and he couldn't make the robot like, punch out a window and like carry him out too. Like there's like so many outs to like.
Then use one good robot versus many bad robots. I feel like your logic is flawed.
But there wasn't many bad robots until the upload happened from the main one. So
I feel like I'm watching a live Reddit debate.
Potentially bad robots.
If you like that movie, if you haven't seen it, then I think that definitely Ex Machina, it's more along the Black Mirror side of the sci-fi thing. Like, that's a fantastic movie that scared the bejesus out of me. Not in a horror movie way, but it was more of like a psychological, like, oh my God, this is terrifying. That, and I'm claustrophobic. I won't give too much away.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Yeah, another one that I could take a pass on a Friday night though, when I just want to like feel good about life again.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
but
don't.
Fail safe, right?
When I watch Disney
from
movies.
both movies, you need to learn put a fail safe in, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was so I've watched Black Mirror, and there's one episode that always sticks with me. Again, sort of the claustrophobia thing, but I think that it was I might describe it incorrectly, but I feel like you guys will know. So basically, you could put your consciousness into like a virtual reality, and your body would sort of fall asleep and become unconscious. And like, so there was people who were stuck almost like in a Star Trek like virtual reality with this guy who kept playing out the same sort of fantasy over and over again. And once they figured it out, they were able to break out of his virtual reality and back into real life. And then, through a series of, events, they managed to get him into his own by himself virtual reality. And then he stayed unconscious. And so he was stuck in that virtual reality forever.
See, that
never
sounds
going
like
to wake up again.
Pieces of a whole bunch of stuff. So
the closest one, it sounds like, is the one that was the Star Trek like one.
Yes, that one.
Yeah. Yes. He was scanning people and making copies of their consciousness for his virtual reality game. Yeah, that one was,
which is it was super creepy. Yeah. So, and I don't think that they ever actually were like, you can't, so they're copies, so they can't like go back out in the real world because they're just pixels. They're not people. So
no, but they're real bodies. Their consciousness re-entered or something. Like, I don't understand how all that technology was supposed to work.
It doesn't work. I mean, that's
clearly, thank goodness. So, Wesley, you also like listening to podcasts focused on technology. So what are some of the podcasts you like, and what draws you into them to be listening to them in your free time?
So I'm heavy on a lot of NPR podcasts. So NPR Politics, Market Watch. There is a niche one about culture called It's Been a Minute. And it talks about what's going on today. And then there's one on race and diversity called Code Switch. Those give me insight into things that I'm interested in, but things that I didn't even know myself. So race and inclusion and diversity is something that I think is very important, but it's one of those nativistic things where if you're too close, you can sometimes feel like it's instinctual instead of being able to articulate some of the nuance. And so I try to make sure that I stay on top of that to not only understand, but give me vocabulary and put words to how I feel. Other ones are also on the Twit podcast network. This Week in Tech is what Twit stands for. And they have This Week in Google. They have This Week in Windows.
How do you even say that? It's like twelve.
Twee. And a lot of that's just easier for me to digest and absorb information from listening to podcasts rather than reading articles and books because of my dyslexia. Because it's a lot easier for me to not only just pay attention and listen, but to when people are explaining it, just hearing how their tone, hearing the intonation, and also putting it in context rather than an article. It feels when you're forced to speak in a narrative, it makes it more sticky in my mind.
I was just getting a comment. Somebody says, Mike Semenak says he's known you for 20 years. Funny is that. So this is one of the things I like about streaming is I get people commenting on things while we're recording, and I didn't know that you knew certain people, and it's fun to like see worlds collide.
Yeah, it's a small world. I sometimes I have my feet in multiple networks also, like marketing, of course, engineering, development. I'm kind of like a social chameleon. Actually, that used to be in my bio for a while on Twitter.
Oh, really? And people were like, I don't know what that is. So
yeah.
But you do talk a lot about neurodiversity, like you mentioned that you're dyslexic. Has that been something that played into your decision to homeschool, or did you homeschool for other reasons? Like I think the educational system is very deficient as well, unless everybody wants, if everybody needs the same plain vanilla thing, it's great. But any difference in any direction, and it's a problem.
It was multiple reasons. Before, like when our kids got into school age, there is also talking about diversity and inclusion. There's there's been plenty of studies about the kind of discrimination that kids face when they enter the public school arena, from not just their peers, but also from an authoritarian like teacher, principal, that whole system. Uh, Kids of color get disciplined more. And when they do get disciplined, it's usually a lot harsher. They're seen as not as smart as some other kids. And kids who are not, I would say, used to people of color also treat them like in an exotic way, or make them part of an out group. And when you are in the in group, quote unquote, that also means that sometimes they have to leave your blackness or your cultural identity in order to fit in, which forces you to kind of like not attach or feel that you have to shed some of who you are in order to get along. And so we're really fearful of that sort of things in the public school arena. And so we enrolled our kid in a private school. Like we're in Austin, very liberal city. So we found a nice granola tree hugging school that like championed diversity and inclusion. And we thought like, this is going to be a good place for our son to go. And we found a shade. Huh?
And it wasn't?
No, we found a shade of some of the, like, let's just say, well, I won't go into too much details, but after 2 weeks in school, we had CPS called on us. And one of the kids said that our son had like attacked him or something like that. And he was new. He was just getting in school. He didn't even know half the kids' names. And then when the kid was asked about it, then the story got modified to something like that our son was leading a gang of people to do it. And just, and so they called the CPS on us because they were concerned, and it was a bad experience.
That he was starting a gang.
Yeah, yes. And then the kid was asked about it again. And then they looked at his record and said, and that same kid had made the same allegation a year prior on another kid before my kid was even enrolled. And it was just something he was doing.
You think they could have done that, by the way, before they called?
Yeah, you think. And like, it was just like, that was downhill. And we're like, and our son got scarred because we had to like question him saying, did you do this? Did you do this? And he was like, no. And like, he felt like no one believed him. And he's like a little kid.
Still pretty young.
Say what?
Too. Your kids are still pretty young too. So it's not like you have teenagers who are, doing these things. Like, if I recall correctly, like your kids are what, 5 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe your son was like 5 or 6 years old.
I was a criminal mastermind by then.
Yeah,
he
was 5 years old at the time.
Light of it, but like, if a 5-year-old can organize a whole gang, great, put him in charge. He deserves it.
Yeah, like, did they have the choreography down, the snaps? I mean, like, I don't know when they would practice. So yeah,
nap time.
Really, man. So homeschooling made the most sense.
Yeah,
and also I'm married to the smartest person in the world. She has a master's. She has an MFA from the Art Institute in Chicago. She got 2 masters and a PhD in sociology. So she's taught at different levels. And she's like, I can do this, and I'll take care of our kids. And so it's a lucky situation. I'm lucky enough to work remotely. We have most of my jobs have had flexible schedules, so it's worked out.
It's lucky. Wesley, where can people learn more about you if they want to get to work with you professionally or learn about any of the work you've done? Because we never talk about work on the show, so they don't get a chance to know what you do.
You can find me on Twitter, Wesley83 on Twitter. I also work at a company called daily.co. So if you go there and hit the help section, they will route it to me. But it's easiest to find me on Twitter. I also have a LinkedIn page on my Twitter bio. You can find out about me. But if you actually want to have a conversation, Twitter's best.
You mean they shouldn't go through the help desk? Gotcha.
No. That way you'll let my employer know, hey, I heard of Wesley. And then maybe I'll get some extra bounty points for like pimping their brand.
Yes. So then definitely do that.
Yes, definitely. I know what I'm doing in the next 5 minutes.
Thanks for talking with us. I learned a lot today.
Mm-hmm. This was fun.
Thanks for having me on.